Good evening, everyone. How are you? Happy Monday. I'm Andrea Worthy. I am the Economic Development Director for the city, and I'm happy to see all of you here. Real quick for me, how many of you have actually attended one of these meetings previously? Oh, good. Okay. And welcome to those who this may be your first time. But I'm glad to see we have some consistency and folks coming out to meetings. So, without too much further ado, we have some of our elected officials will be here for just a few minutes. I've seen a couple of them come in and out, but they have a council meeting to be at 7. We're going to be going through a presentation this evening, and then we're going to get to hear what you think about a preferred concept and an alternate. So we have here with us this evening our consulting team, led by MKSK. And this evening, Luis is going to kick us off, but we also have our friends from Urban Partners. Chris is going to give a little presentation about really what the market feasibility of some of this is, and just looking forward to you all and hearing your input at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, we'll get started. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you all for dedicating a night of your week to us and yet again to show up to these public meetings. This is, like the first two meetings, a tremendous turnout for us. Today will be I'm going to try to do it in like 30 to 45 minutes of a presentation. We'll walk you all through a little bit about what we've done in the process. We'll talk about a quick recap of what we've heard so far, some of the community engagement results that have led to the point where we are today. And then we'll walk you all through what we're calling the preferred concept. It's this vision for the site redevelopment and for the streets and infrastructure surrounding the site. Then after that, we'll go out to the tables at the front of the room. I see that some of you already walked through some of the tables and looked at the materials. You notice that some of them were covered up. That's not because we're hiding anything. We just wanted to share them here first, and then everything will be out at the tables as well. So we'll walk you all through this, and there's opportunity for you all to give us some feedback and some input about what we have been presenting today. So first, let's talk a little bit about this process. We started this in February of this year, and we've had 2 community meetings where we've shared some big questions about what you want from your downtown. We've tested some ideas, and we presented them to you all in our second community meeting. And now we're at the third and final phase of this year-long process. So here we are designing a conceptual vision for the site that's based on a year-long's worth of work. We are presenting to you all what is this preferred vision, and understanding that we are not done yet. We'll continue to refine it, and we will share it with council, and that'll be a document that will then taking forward following this process into a solicitation process to find a development partner for it. We've had just a really great time engaging with the Smyrna community. We've had so much excitement, so much positivity. Our first 2 community meetings had about 450 people each. I love seeing all the raised hands and seeing all the familiar faces today. We've also been out in community events. We also have a project website, downtownsmyrnaredevelopment.com. We've had a group of dedicated plan ambassadors. We've chatted with stakeholders, and we've also done 2 online surveys. We were really excited to share with you all the last time we were here back in August, 3 concepts for the site. You all gave us really amazing feedback from those 3 concepts. And based on that, we've narrowed it down to one preferred vision for the site. We've also did an online survey following that had about 1,000 responses in only about a 2.5-week period. So really showing just a level of excitement and investment into this. Most of the folks that answered that survey actually did not attend the public meeting, so it was additional feedback than what we got from those 200 people that came to the meeting. We also were a taste of Smyrna and had a chance to chat folks directly and share a little bit of information from the online survey. So from all of those conversations, what did we hear? So how many of you all were, the show of hands again, how many were at the last meeting? Okay, big hands. How many of you remember the idea of the Jonquil Mile, by any chance? All right, well, that makes my job a little easier. So the Jonquil Mile, if you all remember, is that really high-quality trail to connect all of downtown Smyrna from the Market Village, the Village Green, down through King Street, and to what we see as the redevelopment of the 9-acre site anchored by a chapel green. This is a really important element in our design and our concepts, and something that we've continued to carry through. We've also shared in the last time 3 concepts for development. You'll see in these massing models that we shared last time, the difference of, the mix of residential in yellow, the retail and beverage in red, and then some other uses like office and hotel in blue and in purple. We tested these with you all, and you all gave us some great feedback from these concepts. Generally, you liked a lot of things, and you also found things that you wanted changed and improved. Things that you told us that you liked, we heard that you all liked the balance of mix of uses with some housing, but still maintaining plenty of space for restaurant, shopping, and retail. You all told us that you liked the idea of having residential and up on the street and then parking behind it, so you didn't feel like there's a lot of parking when you were walking around. People really like the idea of having a food hub or a food or retail hub. And then we showed one of the concepts, a town square. People really like the idea of having an extension of Market Village with that. Y'all told us that the Jonquil Mile was really popular. We had an event space in one of the concepts. People said that they liked the idea of having things that brought people from outside the community into Smyrna. And also, we saw that the townhomes in particular and the different types of housing were really popular, giving more folks different opportunities to live in Smyrna and welcoming new residents. We also know that there are things that we could have improved from our last concept that we hope we've addressed to some extent and made the preferred concept even better. You all told us that you wanted to see more public green space, parks and things that didn't feel like they were private for new residents, but they were more public and accessible for everyone. You told us that you wanted to see more retail and restaurants, a little bit less housing, an opportunity to include a strong anchor. So something that make this unique a destination and that brings people into Smyrna. You also told us that you wanted to see retail, and especially on King Street, but on both sides of the street. So King Street felt like a walkable, vibrant corridor. And we'll talk a little bit about how to get to that today. And then, as we talk about priorities, you said you really wanted to prioritize in a future development local businesses and wanted to make sure that as we bring new buildings, new people, we consider traffic and congestion and parking. So we have some strategies for that, and Paul from C2G will talk a little bit about, how we feel like this development can address these things. In addition, we'll talk a little bit about housing and your concerns about, having more than just for rent housing and having a mix of housing on this site as well. We also asked about connectivity and streets. And from what we've heard, we asked you all to prioritize how we would design future streets for your downtown. And overwhelmingly, when we asked this question, people told us that they wanted to prioritize outdoor dining, sidewalks with street trees, and multi-use paths like the Jonquil Mile. These were the top 3 elements across all of the designs, way above things like adding more lanes for cars or adding on-street parking. People really wanted to have walkable streets that felt like a downtown. So all this to say that from this phase 2 engagement that included the last public meeting and the online survey, we had thousands of comments, and there's a ton of way to summarize these things, but we came up with 6 takeaways. 1, to balance housing with commercial. 2, to make retail and restaurants a destination, make sure that whatever comes into downtown really helps make downtown special. And by making it special, you told us that you wanted to keep the character of Smyrna, that you didn't want a new downtown, you wanted an extension of what's here and what's working. You also told us that you wanted us to consider traffic and parking, that you really wanted us to prioritize green space, and that the goal here is to have a walkable, vibrant development. So we took all of this to heart, and this is what helped us frame this development. So with that, I'm going to share a little bit about the vision, talk about market, and how that led to some of the things that you'll see today. So number 1, the anchor, the heart of the development continues to be the reuse of the chapel. The chapel built in the 1800s, this is the most authentic, the most part of the site's DNA. This is what makes the site special. We really want to celebrate that. You all told us that you'd like to see, as part of this redevelopment, the chapel being reused for something like a small theater, performance space, community space. And we see the opportunity to actually make this even better by doing a small addition to the chapel that helps open up this historic structure into a green space. How this can work architecturally in a variety of ways, we'll show a little bit of an idea of what that can look like. But other places have done it so it celebrates that historic architecture and doesn't diminish some of the things that we love about the structure. Second, one of the key tenets of our preferred design is the idea of the Jonquil Mile. When we first started this process, one of the things that people told us that they didn't want an old downtown and a new downtown. And we really took this as a priority for us because it's important to support the businesses on West Spring Street and make sure that they feel connected to whatever happens a few blocks south on the First Baptist Church site. One of the key ways to do this is by making a walkable connection from Market Village, from the Village Green south. And doing this through the Jonquil Miles is the way to do that. If you all, anyone who's been on the Beltline or goes to some of the great trails across the country, these are two of my personal favorites, the Cultural Trail and the Monon Greenway. They're both in Indiana. But what they do really well is that they have high quality design. They do, custom paving patterns. They incorporate public art. They include lighting and unique branding, and they become a destination by themselves, and they become a little bit part of the brand of the district. And they don't just support walkability, they actually support businesses around it and make it a little bit more feasible for places to be right on the trail. And we understand that this is really crucial for how we want to think through the redevelopment of the site. So one of the first things we think through is, how do we create a vibrant, walkable downtown and environment? And we know that that starts at the ground level. This is where we experience downtown when we walk through the streets. This is when we're walking, what do we feel? We see the sidewalks, great crossings, great street trees, things like benches and connections to public space. That's all incredibly important. And these are things that are within a city's control to do because they own primarily the right of way to do that. What it does is that it removes uncertainty for the development community. They know that it's a great street to put their businesses on. It focuses the city's resources. It connects the destinations that are within the downtown. And it really helps the redevelopment hold its value because it has really great infrastructure to support it. But a great sidewalk by itself doesn't really do that much for walkability. If you're still walking by a parking lot, that great sidewalk just feels like a great sidewalk by a parking lot. So the real vibrancy starts at that street level experience where, as we're walking on a great sidewalk, we understand that there are things that encourage us to walk there. Things like restaurants, retail, things that are designed well with transparency, so as you're walking you can see right into the shops. Things like outdoor dining and things that help motivate folks to come into this area and actually walk there. And to get that done, to make that work, there's a little bit of a trade-off where you have to have some sort of market anchoring that development. So what happens above the ground level really supports the ground level. So things like housing, office, hotel, all these uses that are supported by the market and feasible to occur, what they do is that they enable things to happen at the ground level. Things that you all told us you'd like to see, like restaurants, retail, outdoor dining. These are things that having a feasible development with some market flexibility above can help us get there while preserving character. So to talk a little bit more about market, I'm going to pass it on to Chris from Urban Partners.
Luis. Good evening, everybody. Great job. Great explanation, Luis. That's a little more detail. And I think you went through some of the more detailed market findings back at the August meeting. But this kind of gives you a good summary of what those findings were, which are really an important input into this process. As the public feedback suggested, you all really wanted more restaurants, more local businesses to really kind of create a walkable downtown. As Luis said, and a very important part of that is getting more people in the downtown, whether they're visiting, but even more importantly, living and working. So a really important part of that is more residents to support that. Parking is also very important. If people can't find parking, they're probably not going to stick around and they may go somewhere else. So that's got to be done in a convenient way to attract visitors, shoppers, diners, and residents too. And then as Luis also mentioned, the hotel and office uses are other commercial uses that really fit well in a walkable residential downtown. Office keeps people, soliciting or visiting businesses during the day. They go to maybe happy hour, they go to dinner, so a certain degree of that is really important. And then a hotel gets visitors here, especially if there are events that they can come visit at the hotel. So all these combined are really important components of a strong downtown. Our role in this was to look at the feasibility of those uses, and really all of them do appear to work out for the Smyrna downtown area based on some of the activities in the surrounding areas. In a little more detail, and really the bottom line is, again, more residents. So this plan really comes up with about 350 homes, whether it's for sale, for rent. Some local examples of about those size communities are just the Sink at Jonquil, just across the road, the Belmont. These are large multifamily complexes. Our proposal is about the same units, but spread out a little more. So it's even a little more of a, not quite as dense as some of those complexes. Sorry. And the type of units we're talking about, again, both for sale and for rent. Average rents, we think that could be commanded based on some of your other communities. For a one bedroom, for example, about $1,800 to $1,900. Two bedroom, over $2,000. So again, these are in line with some of your nicer communities in the area. And then some of the for sale prices, if we're talking townhouses or flats, that kind of thing, we're looking at maybe $415,000 to $500,000 based on the size, an 1,800 square foot up to about a 2,200 square foot. So this just gives you an idea of what we think these types of homes, both for rent and for sale, in downtown Smyrna could command based on some of the sales and rents going on both in the town and surrounding downtown. So I'm going to hand it back to Luis.
So all that to say, there's a lot of great market opportunity for downtown, really a way to leverage all the great fundamentals from the market side into getting a development that the city and residents feel proud of and feel like it reflects the character of Smyrna. So let's talk a little bit about what our concept for that is. If you remember this view, you have Church Street on the south part of this with Atlanta Road on the right. We've got King Street in the middle, and then the historic chapel in orange right at that corner of King and Church. So our preferred concept for the site looks very, you'll recognize a few things from the last concepts, but it really comes through the anchoring the development through that heart of what we're calling the Chapel Green. This is a new green space and high quality gathering space for downtown that's built around the chapel, which we're suggesting becomes a community anchor with a kind of a glassy architectural element on the back that now becomes a type of front for the chapel. This helps anchor that green space. We're showing mixed-use buildings along King Street on both sides of the street, connecting on a walkable spine with the existing downtown and Market Village. One of the key things about this is the Jonquil Mile. The Jonquil Mile, shown in orange here, connects the existing development through the Chapel Green, along Memorial Place, and then looping back into West Spring Street. Really thinking through how do you bridge all of these things together through a walkable development. I know that this is a big graphic to show. I'm not moving just because I want to move to a different graphic. I'm actually going to zoom in and give you all a little bit more detail about some of these things. Overall, like Chris had, we're talking about, about 350 new homes in this 9-acre development, which is about on par with other developments here in Smyrna. We're based on the square footage of commercial, we're talking about 8 to 12 new businesses. We're also suggesting a new food or retail hub or food hall at the corner of King and Stephen. That would bring about 4 to 6 new restaurants in that development, and about 120 hotel rooms in a new hotel and small event space visible from Atlanta Road. This would help anchor some of the green space uses. It would help bring people from outside of Smyrna, and it would have kind of a nexus for that green space to have different types of users. The folks using the green space, folks coming in from out of town, people doing events like small weddings or gatherings at the event space, really all getting to benefit from this new public green space. So let's talk a little bit about the Chapel Green. So the Chapel Green really is the heart of the development. Think of it as a smaller, more intimate version of your village green up here where we are. So the Chapel Green includes the Jonquil Mile connecting right through the heart of it. It has the chapel space with the addition kind of anchoring it, the small event space, and then mixed-use buildings that turn the corner from King Street in an L shape into the green itself. So you would have shops, restaurant, outdoor dining facing directly that Jonquil Mile, and having a little bit of a moment on the green space. So you have a lot of eyes on this green space, so it doesn't make it feel like it's an unused or unprogrammed land. It would have a lot of things happening around it. You see in the back, there's a parking garage. This would be screened from view because of the positioning of the site. So it would kind of be in the back of things, but still well accessible with a new system of alleyways. So right now, if you go on Church Street, you have a little bit of a sidewalk, you have some signage, you have a wide setback on the existing building built in 1962. You have the chapel here on the left. When we think about the Chapel Green, our vision is to really open up this space, make it feel more welcoming and make it less of a barrier into the development and more of a welcoming statement into downtown Smyrna, especially on the south side. You see the historic chapel on the left with what we think could be a really high quality architectural addition over here to the right, with some great mezzanine space, perhaps some outdoor dining, could be the entrance to a new public use in the chapel. It could be a restaurant or a small coffee shop. And this really helps activate the green space. And behind that green space, you see some of the new mixed-use buildings. So these are what we're showing here is about 5 stories, which is the maximum height that we're showing in all of the concepts. They have ground level retail with the trail, kind of directly facing the trails, and just a lot of green space, a lot of great things to bring people into and convince them to come to the development. Another key element is the vision for King Street. From the very beginning of the process, you all told us to really focus on King Street as a walkable and vibrant corridor. This is really the spine for this development. If the Chapel Green is the heart, this is the spine. This connects it to the Market Village. And it really does so through a couple things. One, by having mixed-use buildings on both sides that have ground-level retail, great sidewalks, good green space, outdoor dining, and then having the idea of a food hall connected with a plaza that really brings some of that energy from King Street and the Jonquil Mile into the development. And it has some of those things that you all told us that you'd like to see, a lot of retail, restaurant, and dining. If you walk on King Street today, is it that walkable and vibrant environment by itself? Not really. So if you were to say to a developer, let's put a mixed-use building with ground level retail and some the types of restaurants that you told us you'd like to see on this existing street, it'd be a little bit of a hard sell. That environment is not conducive to that type of business, to that type of walkable environment. So by incorporating the Jonquil Mile, adding those design elements, we can create that environment for restaurants and retail to happen. And how does that look like in the future? With the addition of the Jonquil Mile, having great landscaping, trees, banners, lighting, having a dedicated 20 to 25 foot area for this critical piece of infrastructure. You create this walkable spine that if you're looking towards the chapel there on the back, it really connects you seamlessly to the rest of to the downtown, to the development from downtown. You see buildings on both sides of the street. These are 5-story buildings with a slight setback on the 5th story. So from the street, you really only notice 4 stories. But then, thinking how that looks like on the street level, you see balconies, you see windows, you see a lot of activity. And at the ground level, you have a really opportunity to have the types of restaurants and dinings and coffee shops that you all told us you'd like to see. And another thing that you all told us was the importance of character and making sure that this felt like a part of downtown. One of the key ways to do that is to work with the development partner to step down densities, to really think through that change of uses from King Street, where we have mixed-use buildings, back to the neighborhoods, especially on Reed Street, on Stevens Street. These are residential streets. These are streets that have single-family homes and condos on the other side of the street. If you are living in one of those single-family homes and condos, you all told us you don't want to see a 5-story apartment building across the street from you. So what we've done as part of this development is incorporate some lower density, less intensive residential uses like townhomes or stacked flats or smaller condo buildings that line some of these streets and help create a little bit of a buffer and make Stephen and Reed streets feel like residential streets on both sides of the street. In the middle of the development, we show a little bit of a neighborhood park that includes some of the alleyways connecting the new development to King Street, give a little bit of new residents, a little bit of green space, and give existing residents access to those as well. And what we come as a preferred concept, what we really want to come through is a connected downtown. It's a downtown system that doesn't feel like it's been inserted into downtown. It feels like something that is part of the downtown fabric. We do that by a system of streets and alleys that have the same scale and size blocks and block sizes than the rest of downtown, and really extend that through down from the Market Village down to Church Street. What those streets look like, as you think through development with a development partner, you really want to encourage and support walkable streets that have, the option. If you're thinking alleyways, these could be alleyways that are designed to have great things like lighting and signage, things that feel like really walkable areas, even if they're alleyways and behind the scenes, so to speak. But because we know that any type of development, whether good or bad, will have some sort of impact on the experience of downtown, we do want to spend a little bit talking about traffic and parking. So for that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul from C2G to explain some of our moves there.
Thank you, Luis, and good evening, everyone. My job is to talk about everybody's favorite topic, traffic. Developments of this nature are very conducive, is the word Luis used. Taking all these different aspects, you think, how is it possible to build this much development on a parcel of this size and not have it just gridlocked 24/7? And these are the primary reasons why. Number one, Smyrna has a nice connected grid of streets. Anytime there is a quote downtown area, it's traditionally associated with a grid of streets where there are multiple options, whether those two-way streets, one-way streets, connecting alleys and those types of things. That network gives people options. And you can tell by the number of arrows on the screen, there is no one street that's going to carry this entire load. That's first and foremost. It's very distributed, and it allows people to come in from different ways and access the parking areas from different locations. And the second big topic that we wanted to convey is the actual type of development, that it is mixed use. And what that means is people live where the activities are, that so many of the anticipated trips, that's an engineering term for how we categorize or actually account for the number of visitors to the location. This will host a lot of non-motorized trips. We are so close to the existing neighborhood. We have residents across the railroad at Spring, over by the Publix at Jonquil. It's very walkable to get here. Not to mention the fact that people that will be living above and can simply walk downstairs to live, work, play at all of these shops, restaurants, and so forth. In other words, it's self-sustaining. And research by organizations such as the Institute of Transportation Engineers come to the conclusion that, in developments such as this, 30 to 35%, and with the existing neighborhood on the periphery, possibly as much as 40%, would be walking and biking trips. And that really reinforces the assets that these sidewalks and the Jonquil Mile and other facilities such as that will add to this. The more that we can get people to participate on their feet and on bikes and other modes of transportation other than four wheels and cars, the more thriving it will be, the more people that we can bring in, and that will help feed these businesses. And then, of course, we've hit that home a lot with the walking and biking facilities that are in and around the area and the connectivity to the other existing trail and to the neighborhoods, of course. And all of these things put together really enhance the mobility, making it both safe, efficient, and that helps us also right-size the parking supply. And we've talked a lot about the garages that'll be nestled in between the buildings and hidden and so forth. And that's the other attribute of a mixed-use development, a concept we call travel demand management, where over the course of the day, the different periods of the day, the parking is used for different purposes. Of course, there will be those spots reserved for residents of the buildings, but during the day, we'll have office workers, office visitors, people doing business. In the evenings, we'll have restaurant people, restaurant patrons, evenings and weekends, possibly retail activity. So there's turnover and multiple uses for the parking spaces, to where that not every individual office, not every individual restaurant, not every individual store needs its own dedicated parking. And that helps reduce the footprint and the overall impact of everything. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Luis.
Thank you. So one last thing about the design is, creating a walkable environment doesn't really just end and begin at the site. It really is a type of sensitivity that needs to be carried on to other parts of downtown. One of the things that you all told us to think through as well is how we can make sure that other great parts of downtown, like the Market Village, don't feel like the old downtown, that there are ways to freshen up or reinvest in these areas so businesses there continue to be supportive. One of the ways that we're proposing to do this is by refreshing West Spring Street through the Market Village. Based on the age of the infrastructure on that street, there is a kind of a time when that infrastructure will reach the end of its usable lifespan. So the city will have to reconsider some of those materials and some of that streetscapes. It's good to have a plan on how to do that, and what we're suggesting is incorporating the elements of the Jonquil Mile and making West Spring Street feel to the same level of quality, of care, of design as the new development that happens a little bit south on the site redevelopment. So for that, we are suggesting narrowing the median, which is now a little bit of an underutilized grassy median that gets most of its use during event space, but little on a daily patterns. It feels a little bit of a wasted space. We've told that there's some safety concerns because there's little space for kids to play by dining areas. We heard that people feel unsafe when kids are running around. They'd like cars to be slowed down. So one of the ways that we're addressing this is by expanding sidewalks on both sides of the street, narrowing that median to make it more of a landscaped area, continuing to have signage, continue to have lighting and banners and great things, but incorporating some elements of the Jonquil Mile, so you have that really high quality streetscapes running right through the heart of your Market Village and connecting it to King Street and to that new development. So we've shown a lot today. I know we've shown a lot of pictures, a lot of diagrams. They're a little bit hard to digest right at the very beginning. I saw some of you all taking pictures, which is awesome. Just so you know, the project website, downtownsmyrnaredevelopment.com, already has this presentation right on the homepage. So if you'd like to take a second look at things, feel free to go to that website and download that presentation and take a look. Everything that you've seen here today on this presentation is also printed and on the boards in the back of the room. And myself and our team members will be back there hearing any comments, concerns, or that you may have or clarifications that you want to know about the concepts. We also take compliments, though. So what's next in this process? So I told you all we're at the end of the process. That doesn't mean we're done listening. We are here for a reason, and that's to continue to hear what you all think. We will continue revising this preferred concept based on the feedback. We will look at how that relates to feasibility, and then we'll go back to the city and do a couple of things. We will do a final document that summarizes everything we've heard. This will be a great appendix for the city to submit as part of an RFP, RFQ process. Then we will provide some recommendations, so for what are some next steps to make this vision more of a reality, things that you can actually start seeing on the site. And this will be a document that will be shared with City Council for their adoption. And I just want to be very clear about, as we think through next in development, I want to set the very realistic expectation that as a city finds a development partner to make this happen, what you all see built on the site will almost surely not look like the massing that I'm showing you today. This is a community-driven vision. These are things that we know are important to you all. It is now council and the city's job to align the needs of a developer with this vision and make a development that gets us somewhere in the middle, hopefully more towards the community priorities, but somewhere that's realistic and that things that you all told us you like about the concepts, like the Jonquil Mile, like the green spaces, like the mix of housing, continue to be a part of any final vision on the site. These are conceptual, but what happens through this process really influences how the city can negotiate and how the city can work with the developers to make this vision a reality. So it's a very important step for us to do this process. How the process moves beyond this 12-month period, there's a lot of options for it. The city can go into a procurement or solicitation process to look for a development partner. There's multiple options that other cities across the metro area have done to make this a reality. There's a request for qualifications where the city reaches out, puts out, asks the development community to essentially submit qualifications to make sure they're qualified for development, and then from a narrower list of interested developers, the city issues a more specific request for proposals to find that development partner. The city could also not do what we're calling the RFQ and go straight to a request for proposals, and as part of that, issue some of the recommendations from this process to define those community priorities and find a development partner. Or the city could do a little bit of a hybrid process and allow for market comments in between. Regardless, these are things that take a little bit of time, take negotiation, but really consider and prioritize what you all told us as a community. Just personally working on these types of projects across the country, the city could have just sold the land to an interested developer. It is really important that they're doing this public process, soliciting feedback and incorporating that into this process to make sure that the site redevelopment aligns with what you all want to see for your downtown. And that is a commitment that has carried this process up to this point. Once a city finds a development partner whose vision aligns with this community vision, there'll still be a little bit of a negotiation, but hopefully that's the step that'll take us to you all seeing some buildings and some green spaces and infrastructure on this site. So with that, I want to invite everyone to just please meet us at the table. I see some of you are already there. There'll be some of these renderings. There'll be activities. We're going to be asking you all, what do you like about the concepts? What do you wish we could improve? And how closely this aligns with your vision for the site. So thank you all, and we'll meet at the tables. Appreciate your time.